the regulation and the legislation that's out there is actually not very helpful at times. And what it comes down to effectively is businesses need to make their own decision, taking a risk-based approach.
Hi, Harris. So we've been asked to come today and have a chat about data retention. So that's in the context of businesses collecting potentially vast amounts of data, what they should be doing with it, whether they should be keeping it or looking to dump it because they have to, or because they have no use for it. In a world where we talk about growth being driven by data, are there situations where data needs to be kept or should be kept or absolutely has to be gotten rid of? Can you give me, I suppose, some insights into that at the outset?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, firstly, we do recognise that businesses spend a lot of money, a lot of time on gathering data. We live in a data-driven world, so businesses, rightfully so, are collecting data. We also understand the value of data. For businesses, it can help them make day-to-day decisions, or it could also help them with business-critical decisions as well. So it is very valuable, and we understand that businesses might not always want to get rid of data. But data isn't always as valuable as what you think. As an example, data can become outdated. Depending on the industry that you're involved in, it can become outdated pretty quickly as well. So businesses need to have a think about that from a commercial perspective. Are you making decisions based on outdated data? That might be quite impractical and it might be counterproductive as well. And you also need to have a think about the costs of that as well. If you're gathering mass amounts of data which is outdated, there's storage costs involved, there's costs with security. So these kind of costs and fees can quickly rack up as well. But taking a step aside from the commercial viability, you also have to think about the regulatory and the legal lens. So for businesses, depending on which sector you might operate in, you're going to have a lot of pressure from your regulators to make sure data is accurate. With that, you need to make sure that your data is up to date and you're not holding on to any outdated data. And similarly, for example, with data protection, there's also certain requirements that businesses need to comply with as well. So on one side, you've also got the commercial viability, and on the other side, you've got regulatory compliance as well.
So you said there might be some rules. What are the rules? When should businesses be deleting data, or are there situations where they absolutely must delete data?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and one that often people find difficult to answer. Companies come to us and they want a single short answer, and unfortunately we can't give them that answer. The regulation and the legislation that's out there is actually not very helpful at times. If you take data protection, for example, you're supposed to hold data for no longer than necessary. What is no longer than necessary? It's quite difficult to be able to give clients a clear answer on that. And what it comes down to effectively is businesses need to make their own decision, taking a risk-based approach. So it's quite difficult to give clients a clear answer, but we can help them in the process as well.
That's great. So are there any kind of key takeaways, I suppose, that you would leave people with just in the context of data retention for a business?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the key things that businesses can do is sit down and have a think about when does it not become necessary anymore. So the data that you hold, it won't be valuable forever, but at what point do you no longer need it? Think about that from a commercial viability perspective, but also from the perspective of, are you complying with the law and regulation? Once you've sat down and once you've got that information, put it down in writing, and that's where we recommend that a data retention policy is put in place. But don't just put it in the drawer and not look at it again. You want to have a think about how long should I go with before reviewing it. So you want to have a think about, should I do it periodically, whether that's annually, every 6 months. And finally, the last thing that we recommend is putting in place some automation, whether that's automated deletion or automated processes. We just want to make sure to make the job as easy as possible, and making sure you're only holding on to data which is actually valuable.
That sounds like a really sensible practical step, the automation angle, just making sure that you're not having human error where people forget to delete things, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all of a sudden you've got a bank of data that you don't want or need. That's been great, really practical steps, some good pointers. I know you've written a bandwidth article on this. It's part of our bandwidth data series. So I can read the article, and if they want to have a chat about it, then they can get in touch with us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great, thanks Harris.
Thank you.